My emulation was not on, bro. I'm pretty sure I saw 1.3 million a couple of times. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back everyone to another video. So today I wanted to talk about Ember, especially the weapons platform Ember, where we actually use the weapons to do damage instead of our nuking abilities, and which she really excels in, by the way. The mods that I'm using on my Ember are pretty much basically these on most runs, because I have tried a couple of builds but they have not really resonated with me that much. I tried a Silence Ember build, but it lacks severe energy. Eclipse Ember, it just doesn't work. I tried like a Nourish Ember, replacing the Fireball instead of the nuke, and tried to just keep nuking everything, but the damage just isn't there. So one of my good clanmates told me that Fireball Frenzy was super good on her. So I immediately got to work, took out her fourth skill for Nourish. Well, that just solves our energy abilities, and we're gonna be using the Fireball tap hold skill to buff ourselves up. So the mods around here are pretty simple. I will get back to Surefooted in a while. We are using the Archon mods, the Vitality and the Intensify. Although I would say try to get the Vitality more, because it's so much better on her. So everything else, we have like two augments, Healing Flame and Fireball Frenzy. You can get those from the syndicates. Instead of Prime Continuity, you can also use the normal continuity if you have that, or just a plain all augur message if you want. Equilibrium, almost kind of mandatory on here. Now, adaptation is the second layer of damage reduction that we are gonna have on top of immolation. This does help us survive the steel path. So as for the arcanes, I like the molt efficient and the molt augmented ones. You can also try going for something like energize if you feel like you don't want to use equilibrium, or if you wanna use something else. But Molt Augmented, highly recommended. It just buffs out our strength. Like we get from 25% strength here and like 60% here. That's 85% strength increase from these two, Arcane and Mod alone. Now, Surefooted is mostly here because of the knockback from Kuva Zarr, which I will show in a second. But if you don't want to use Surefooted, you can also use something like the drift mods. It's totally up to you. You can go for like a power drift or for a cunning drift if you want a bit of range. But I feel like since we will be mostly spamming her Fire Blast anyways to strip armor, because that's the only skill we'll be spamming, and everything else will be on like timer base. So it's up to you if you want to be using sure-footed here, or if you want to use a bit more power, ability strength, or ability range. Now for the first weapon, I highly recommend trying the Kuva Zarr. And for those of you who don't know how to get the Kuva Zarr, you gotta beat up the Lich. And how to beat up the Lich, I'm gonna assume you already know how to do that. And if you don't know that, I highly recommend just trying to look up a video on how to do the Liches. And Kuva Zarr pairs very nicely with Ember because of its AoE. Now I do have a Riven, but it's decent. The Riven disposition on Kuva Zarr is extremely bad. So I'm just using it because it just enables me to complete my mod setup. So there's a couple of things. Well, you see a shiny little mods here which a lot of people might not have. So I will address those right away. Instead of primed cryo rounds, you can also use the normal cryo rounds, which has around 75% less damage, but that's fine. We are going to be doing a ton of damage anyway. Instead of primed Firestorm, you can also use the normal Firestorm, which is totally also going to work. But if you don't want to use Firestorm, that's totally understandable, but it just increases the AoE so much. It's just hard not to play without it, you know. And the ammo mutation is something I would say, please just use one, dude. It's very hard to use Kuva Zarr without the ammo mutation. Now you can definitely use the normal ammo mutation, that can also work, which is gonna give you roughly around 50% conversion on secondary ammo pickups. But if you can get the primed one, you can go up to like 92% if you totally max that. But I kept it at 75 because, well, I'm not too rich on endo or credits. So anyway, with the main problems of Kuva Zarr in the way, we have the galvanized mods for aptitude and multi-shot here. We have critical delay here. Now instead of critical delay, you can also use point strike, which is not gonna change much. You're still gonna have like well, if I remove my Riven, you're gonna have like 62% critical chance instead of 75%, which isn't that bad. So it's totally up to you, whichever you want to use, whichever you feel comfortable with. And as for the last one, now Hunter Munitions is something I didn't know. Interacted with Kuva Zarr. I came across this comment on YouTube and I started cooking, and I was like, huh, this kind of seems really nice. This kind of seems really nice. And it actually feels really nice to see the slash procs. So that's the general base build I'm using. It's on Toxin Magnetic. Now do keep in mind that the Toxin here is going to be converted into gas damage because of Firewall Frenzy, because we are going to have the heat damage which is going to infuse with our weapon. That's going to infuse with the Toxin to become gas. There's another way of keeping in mind that your weapon will be changing its element as well. And if you don't want to use magnetic, don't worry, we can also use another build for the viral blast. This, I believe this one is the highest damage I could do with my Zarr, especially because I have replaced the high voltage here with a semi-rifle cannonade. It just flat out gives 240% damage, which is kinda hard to give up. You can also put like a serration or like an amalgam serration here, but 240%, I just can't do it. I just can't. It goes to around like 12,500 damage, whereas it's like 4,000 ish here. So this is probably the highest damage DPS I could do with this setup. Also, I forgot to talk about my Riven. So my Riven has like 76% critical damage and 94% critical chance. You can also just remove this Riven for something like a Vital Sense. But if you don't have the Riven, feel free to slap that in. That can also totally work. But I like having the Riven because mostly because it just increases my critical chance to over 100, and I don't need to use Vital Sense anywhere in this build. So that just frees up another mod slot for me. So the Riven itself is not that expensive since it's like one disposition anyway. If you can have one, try to get one. And if you already have one, well, if you have good rolls, good for you, dude. But if you want to get something like critical chance and critical damage, that also works. So one of the fun interactions with critical delay and semi-rifle cannonade is that if you don't have semi-rifle cannonade here, you can see that your critical delay is going to reduce your fire rate to 1.75. But if you bring back the mod again, you will see that your fire rate goes back up. So that's a nice little interaction we have. And that's one of the reasons I like using critical delay here. And for the last one, if you want to fight the murmurs, you can go for a radiation blast build. The radiation is super nice. I have actually replaced the cryo rounds here for in case of radiated reload. Now radiated reload gives us a bit of reload speed, so our reload goes a lot lower. It does become a lot faster, although we do lose a lot of damage, but it's still fine because semi-rifle cannonade still gives us that massive damage boost. As for the arcanes, well, primary merciless pretty much needed here because of the reload speed, but that damage on kill is also pretty nice. Now you can also use something like primary blight if you have one, but well, as always, I'm still trying to get that one myself, so I haven't really tested that. But primary merciless seems more universal, and I guess it's just fine here. Now for the second weapon, it's dual Toxocyst. This weapon needs the introduction. I'm gonna speed run through the build here very fast. So the second evaluation is the base damage and a multi-shot. The third evaluation is minus 50% recoil, and the last one is base 20% critical chance. Now I have no Riven on this build alone. The only reason I have this weapon here is because I want a weapon that does a lot of single target DPS in case I run into a stalker or something where I'm not ready to deal with them. So all the highlight of this build is the Cascadia Flare here. Now if you don't know where to get this mod, I will put the details on the screen right here. So the reason I'm using this arcane is because it pairs super well with the fire blast of Ember, because it just stacks up to 480%, which is almost instant, almost instant, and you always have that stacked up. So it's like 5 times damage every single time you're doing damage, and it's so universal. It's like flat damage, and it's kind of hard to play without this on Ember. Cascadia Flare is gonna be super universal with all of the weapons. With everything that you're gonna be doing, it's just gonna be flat out boosting your damage to insane levels. So again, the build itself is very simple. We are using like Galvanized Diffusion here, the Prime, Pistol Gambit, and Target Cracker. And if you don't have those, you can use the normal versions, which are basically, so there's Gambit and there's Target Cracker. So feel free to replace those, and everything else should be achievable. If you don't have the Prime mods, Diffusion is from the Arbitration, I believe, and a subsystem is mostly there to reduce the amount of spread on the weapon itself, so you get to do more headshot damage, and it gets easier to stack up the incarnon charges. Now this is a weapon I didn't think I would end up liking that much, but it is like a sister weapon. But you can actually get this from Blast Gambit by using 40 corrupted hollow keys. Now I don't have the maxed out balance bonus yet, but it's like 26% electricity right now. This is the basic build. You should have most of these bonds apart from Prime Pressure Point, and Sacrificial Steel is from one of the quests. If you don't have that, make sure to check your inventory, because chances are it might be just lying there. It just brings our critical chance to like 78%. Condition Overload pretty much very nice because of the amount of buffs that we have, and top of the heat damage that we are getting from Fireball's Frenzy. Now Weeping Wounds, again, very good to boost up our low status chance. Gladiator Might is there for the critical damage and some slight amount of critical chance per combo multiplier. Quickening, that's a bit of a rare mod, but we can also get that for 10 plat from the market, 10 or 20 plat. The attack speed is definitely nice. The weapon is a bit slow. So if you feel like if you don't want to use quickening, you can use something like a Berserker, which gives like 70% attack speed on kill, or you can use something like a Primed Fury if you have that. I wouldn't really suggest using like a Fury, because at that point quickening is just better. So it's a tie between Prime Fury and Berserker, whichever one you want to use. Now I'm running like a radiation build on this setup. It does a lot of slash damage, so this weapon is gonna be super good against Marmos. As for the Arcane, I'm mostly using melee exposure because of the corrosive damage on melee strikes. It's super easy to stack up. Again, 240% corrosive damage on melee strikes. You basically have the ability to strip armor anyway, on top of the armor that you're stripping from your Fire Blast. So with the builds out of the way, one final thing is that if you don't want to use Madura here, which is pretty much necessary for some missions, you can try to use from Zenuric. The Energy Pulse is super good for sustaining energy on her. You don't even need to go into Wellspring or Hardened Wellspring. Just the Energy Pulse itself is going to give you tons of energy. Now, the final build, Panzer Valpaphyla. That's the last line of defense we have. Now, if you didn't know, Companions got a rework recently. So we have like additional weapons on this beat. So my setup for my Panzer is basically Martyr Symbiosis, because that's just so good. Duplex Bond, because we're going to be spending our abilities anyway, and it just gives us a small chance of getting some more energy orbs. Some Spasmic Bonds, again, your second skill is going to be channeled, so any bit of efficiency is good on your part because you will never out of energy. Loyal Retriever, just super helpful for getting some extra credit and resources. You should have this one in your inventory. I believe this is like a change mod. If you don't have that, you can also use like something like a Resourceful Retriever. You can also get that from Sun, I believe. Momentous Bond, super good for recovering the companion. Also adds like a small amount of random elemental damage every time we kill an Eximus. And finally, Panzer Evolution, well, mostly for the viral damage spread. So as for the claws, I'm still trying to get some of the elemental mods myself. So I believe I'm missing like the electric and the fire one. So those are the two mods I'm missing. I do have one Sepsip's Claw, so the companion itself is gonna be doing toxic damage. For the weapon, the bite is kinda here right now, so if you haven't maxed this mod already, you feel free to go ahead and max it, because it's very good with the companion. Really increase the critical chance and critical damage. Everything else just basic. I don't have a lot of mods here. I definitely farm some of them, but feel free to place whatever you want. So my Archon shards are pretty simple. I didn't want to do too much with it. I've only gone for like 2 crimson shards here and 3 blue shards here, or the azure shards. So the only thing I could upgrade here is getting this one to Tau Forged and getting these two to Tau Forged as well. And instead of the third one, I could go for either a casting speed or a parkour velocity. But I feel like parkour velocity would be very nice with her because she's a bit slow because our sprint speed is only 1.1. And with that parkour velocity, because I would be jumping around a lot anyway with my Kuva Zarr. So that additional bit of parkour velocity at least 25% on the Tau Forge one would be super good. Now as for the most change, I believe I'm constantly switching up the Zarr between the three builds. So we're gonna be testing out all three of them to show you how the damage is between enemies. So we're gonna get some enemy energy and we're gonna come here. So the rotation is that we press our second skill, we press our frenzy, then we press our nourish, then we use third skill to strip armor and we start blasting. Well, they're gone. Now we have some galvanized mods stacked up, so if we try to bring the enemies again, you will see they pretty much just disappear. Just gone. Okay, so we are gonna be testing on the corrupted heavy gunner Eximus here. We got our energy. So the rotation is that we come near the enemies, we press our immolation, we press our fireball, we tap our fireball frenzy to get the buff. Then we press our nourish, then we strip them. We're gonna press it twice and we start blasting. And they're gone. Pretty much gone. Now we're gonna do this again just because we have the stacks now. Alright, same thing. We strip their armor with Fire Blast, then we start blasting again. Pretty much gone by 3 shots. Half of them is just gone by 3 shots, and the ones that aren't gone, well, they're gone now. Okay. Now for the second build. Now this one is Viral Blast. So we have the semi-rifle cannonade here, so it's gonna do stupid amounts of damage. Alright, we simulate again, take our energy, immolation, fireball frenzy, then nourish, then we do some fire blast, and bing bang boom. They're gone. Now that we have some stacks up, I'm gonna cast the enemies again. This time, strip them. They are pretty much gone with two shots. 2 shots. These are steel pad level 200 enemies. Just gone. Now once you have like the max strength and maxed out your fireball frenzy buff and everything else, you're gonna be one-shotting most enemies anyway. So it doesn't really matter. As for the last one, it will do a bit less damage, but against murmurs, I'm gonna show that it does super well. Now clear out the enemies. We are gonna show murmur battle goop. Get some energy, immolation, fireball frenzy, nourish, strip their armor. Their armor is almost gone, and well, there you go. It's so brain dead fun. It's very fun. It's very fun, dude. It's super good. Now as for the last one, let me show you how the Tenet weapon works. So we strip them with our fire blast and we are already doing over 300,000 damage. Although the weapon is a bit slow, but it's super good. Just chops on them up so nicely. I'm not really using my melee that much. I'm mostly using my Kuva Zarr. So let's test that out in a place, shall we? For this test, we are going to be using our viral blast setup, and everything is pretty much the same. We're not going to change anything. We are just going to go Now we are going to be heading over to Circulus to test our damage. This is one of the highest level mobs in the game, and it's a survival mission, so we should be fine if we're solo here. So immediately I'm gonna just pop some energy boosters so that I don't just randomly die out here. And I'm gonna start stacking up all my buffs. So enemies are coming around, we're gonna start fire blasting and we are just gonna shoot them off. So you will get staggered sometimes because the blast radius of Kuvas are super high. But if you practice well enough, you can shoot the enemies from a bit far and they will be dead anyway. Now the only downside to playing Kuvazar is that you need to constantly wait for it to reload, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, but you get used to it anyway after a while. It just gets you a time to just reset and look through the screen, where to shoot, where not to shoot. I'm usually trying to shoot in the middle where it has like the peak radius, so I hit all the enemies. That's pretty much it. So I'm rarely using any weapons while I'm playing Ember because I mostly like using my Kuva Zarr. But it's so good clearing out enemies. It's not even funny how good it is. Now do keep in mind these are steel pad enemies. I'm just practically one-shotting them every time I'm just going near them. So I have a lot of buffs. As you can see, I have like 245% corrosive buff from the melee arcane. I have 212%, well 245% now from the Fireball Frenzy, because if you didn't know, Ember's passive gives additional ability strength for the amount of people or mobs. Not people, I don't know why I said people, for the mobs that are nearby. You can also try using the glaive with Ember, but I believe I've already shown the glaive build before, so I don't want to showcase that right now. But the glaive works super nicely with Ember just because you don't really never need to go near enemies, and now Ember being squishy as she is, just much better. If you ever feel like enemies are crowding you out, just start blasting, dude. Say hell yeah, brother, it's freaking blasting time. So one of the cool things that I noticed with Adaptation and Kuva Zarr is that if you get self-inflicted with the blast radius, you get the 90% slash proc resistance, which is also super good because well, I don't know how it works, but it works, and there's no self-damage in the game anyway. So it's pretty much 24/7 damage reduction. For all the bullshit damage I'm doing everywhere else, I haven't really died even once. Now we see the sentient there and he's gone. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope I was useful in this video. I really like playing Ember because she's so cool. Definitely not because of her. Anyway, thank you very much and I will see you on the next one. Bye.